Hello children. In the previous session, we learned about speed and time and how they are measured. Now, in this session, we will learn about the pictorial representation of moving objects, that is, distance time graph from the lesson Motion and Time from class 7th Science. Learning outcomes. At the end of this session, you will be able to understand about types of graph, introduction to line graph, distance time graph. Points to remember while choosing the scale of the graph. Keywords. Distance. The complete length of the path between any two points. Bar graph. Pie chart. Line graph. X-axis. The horizontal axis on the graph. Y-axis, the vertical axis on the graph. Origin, the point where the axes of the system intersect. Before starting, let us look at the concept map of this session. Have seen newspapers, magazines, etc. presenting information in various forms of graphs to make it interesting. Few types of graphs such as bar graphs, pie charts and line graphs are displayed on the screen. Now, we will learn about line graph. Take a sheet of graph paper. Draw two lines perpendicular to each other on it as shown. Mark the horizontal line as x or x dash. It is known as the x-axis. Similarly, mark the vertical line y o y dash. It is called the y-axis. The point of intersection of x o x dash and y o y dash is known as the origin O. The two quantities between which the graph is drawn are shown along these two axes. We show the positive values on the x-axis along OX. Similarly, positive values on the y-axis are shown along OY. We show the negative values on the x dash axis along OX dash. Similarly, negative values on the y dash axis are shown along OY dash. To understand the distance time graph, we have to plot a line graph based on distance and time. For this, let us take the distance travelled by a car and the time taken by it to cover that distance. Their data is shown on the screen. Draw two perpendicular lines to represent the two axes and mark them as OX and OY. Here, we take the time along the x-axis and the distance along the y-axis. For the motion of the car scales taken are time 1 minute is equal to 1 centimeter. Distance 1 kilometer is equal to 1 centimeter. Mark values for the time and distance on the respective axis according to the scale you have chosen. For the motion of the car, mark the time 1 minute, 2 minute, so on the x-axis from the origin O. Similarly, mark the distance 1 kilometer, 2 kilometer, so on the y-axis. Now, mark the points on the graph paper to represent each set of values for distance and time. Observation shows that at 0 minute, the distance moved is also 0. The point corresponding to this set of values on the graph will therefore be the origin itself. After 1 minute, the car has moved a distance of 1 kilometer. Then, mark this set of values by looking at the point that represents 1 minute on the x-axis. Draw a line parallel to the y-axis at this point. Then, draw a line parallel to the x-axis from the point corresponding to a distance of 1 kilometer on the y-axis. The point where these two lines intersect represents this set of values on the graph. Similarly, mark on the graph paper the points corresponding to different sets of values. The figure shows the set of points on the graph corresponding to the positions of the car at various times. Join all the points on the graph. It is a straight line. This is the distance-time graph for the motion of the car. If the distance-time graph is a straight line, it indicates that the object is moving at a constant speed. However, if the speed of the object keeps changing, the graph can be of any other shape. Some of the points that have to be kept in mind while choosing the most suitable scale for drawing a graph are the distance between the highest and the lowest values of each quantity, the intermediate values of each quantity, so that with the scale chosen, it is convenient to mark the values on the graph. To utilize the maximum part of the paper on which the graph is to be drawn. Let us look at an example for the distance-time graph, where we have to choose two different scales to represent the desired quantities on the x-axis and the y-axis. For this, let us consider the motion of the bus. The distance covered and time taken by the bus are shown in the table. The total distance covered by the bus is 80 kilometers. For the motion of the bus, scales taken are: distance 10 kilometers is equal to 1 centimeter and time 15 minutes is equal to 1 centimeter. The graph is plotted for the given data. Distance time graphs provide a variety of information about the motion when compared to the data presented by a table. The table gives information about the distance moved by the bus only at some definite time intervals. On the other hand, from the distance time graph, we can find the distance moved by the bus at any instant of time. Suppose we want to know how much distance the bus had travelled at 8:15 am. We mark the point corresponding to the time 8:15 am on the x-axis. Then draw a line perpendicular to the x-axis at point A and mark the point T on the graph at which this perpendicular line intersects it. Then draw a line through the point T parallel to the x-axis. This intersects the y-axis at point B. The distance corresponding to point B on the y-axis, OB, gives us the distance in kilometers covered by the bus at 8:15 am. Points to remember. The motion of objects can be presented in pictorial form by the distance time graphs. The distance time graph for the motion of an object moving with a constant speed is a straight line. The point where the axes of the system intersect is called the origin. The table gives information about the distance moved by the object only at some definite time intervals. From the distance time graph, we can find the distance moved by the object at any instant of time. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned to Ashray Akruti.